All right, so welcome to Innovating the Future of Learning. How fun. I got inspired to pull this together because of Julia. Julia got super passionate about kind of revolutionizing the education system for kids because she has 4 grandkids that she's been teaching on Zoom during the lockdown. So this is all down to her. And I was telling her about all the people I knew who had exciting, interesting backgrounds and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, why don't we just all get together on a call and we can share our stuff and see what comes of it. So hence this call. So the format at the moment is going to be that I'm going to have each of the presenters spend about 5 minutes just talking about your own unique key. What's key to you about innovating the future of learning? I'll introduce you so you can just go straight into, what matters to you. And then I want to open it up for just a kind of general discussion on some topics to see what comes from that. So, sound good?
Brilliant.
Okay, let's all just line up first. So just take a deep breath. Feel yourself as an innovator, a creator, a source of the next new, and especially all the kids, all the educators, all the people in the world who want to learn in new ways, for that brilliance and genius to shine. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, I'm going to do a quick overview of who the people are that are going to present. So Layla and Anthony have written a book called Jump, Fly, Fall, I think it is. Did I get that in the right order?
Jump,
Fall, Fly. Yes, right. That's the better order. And Centaur and I and Ian and Pip, we met in Spain years ago. We were supposed to just have lunch for an hour and we didn't get up for 5 or 6 hours from the table. We were like, oh, we couldn't stop talking about all the things that matter so much to us. And they have, I think, 3 children, yes, 3, and have traveled around Europe in a caravan and have homeschooled their kids, and they do amazing creative things as well. So they're going to talk about some of that. Ian, who's under E-Inspirational here, we met, 25 years ago, Ian, and I remember I was with you in the moment at Buckland Hall where you said, I'm going to start the Campaign for Adventure. And since then, he's done all kinds of wonderful things in the name of that, in terms of making UK more adventuresome through its laws and government and also leadership stuff. But then he's also worked with the Prince's Trust and I think the BBC on summer camps for kids as well, right? So outdoor learning is what I really would love you to talk about and how that works for kids. So Karina Barley is near Melbourne in Australia. Karina, you stick up your hand for a sec. Yeah, so they know who you are. Yeah. And she's just this year completed her doctorate in education on epiphanous learning. Ooh, can't wait to hear about that one. And you work a lot with autistic children. And I know you're teaching teachers and teachers' aides and anybody who works in the education system how to have inclusive environments for children. Oh, so brilliant. I love it. Fleur Barnfather, the one with the wings, is an artist and a mom of a 15-year-old who's been homeschooled and also went to Steiner School for a while and who's now at college learning game coding. So she's going to share some of that experience with us. Julia Miles is a grandmother of 4 who's been teaching those kids on Zoom for the last 3-4 months and having a ball, and she's the one who inspired this and said, yes, I want to do something about the kids. So, and we have other people with us. Well, Centauri, my husband's with us, and Ushmi is in Germany. Cesarina is near Toronto in Ontario, and Bryony is in the UK, who lives very close to Julia near Portsmouth. So there you go. We're from various places and we all love this topic. So there you go. So I'm going to start with Karina because she may have to leave us a little bit early. And I'm going to put the 5-minute timer on, Karina, and I'll give you 1 minute notice as you get close to it, if you can.
I'm going to try and put it all into 5 minutes. It's going to be hard, but we'll see. We'll see
I
how we go.
know. Well, go for it and see what happens.
I kind of was, trying to think of all the things that I could talk about, because there really are so many things. And in terms of, when I came back from the US early this year, really the whole COVID thing kind of was set in motion. And so, and Monash acted very quickly, and our government acted really quickly. And before we knew it, our schools were basically in lockdown. And so so I thought about all the things that I could talk about with that, and it's been such an amazing transformation. And having to go to teaching via Zoom, and and talk about epiphanous change in learning. It's like just one epiphany after the other. But what I thought would be the best thing to share is a little case study of a boy that I was working with who is autistic. And he's been probably one of the most difficult boys I've worked with. Incredibly challenging behaviours, lots of violence and aggression. He's he's a twin, and he has another younger brother who also has cancer. And so there was a lot of, and a single mom, the whole kind of background story. And so the two boys, unfortunately, were separated. The mum wasn't able to cater to both, and was only able to, so the other one's gone to the grandparents, and then, of course, the little boy with cancer. So anyway, so that transition to learning was incredibly difficult. So the very first day, we tried to do a Zoom call. I put everything in a Google Doc for him and color-coded all the subject areas. And the first day we did a Zoom call, he threw the laptop on the floor. I'm like, okay, that was a really good start, So, so I went back. I always say we go back to the drawing board, and then I finally kind of had to break my own curtain, my own quarantine. I went and saw him, and what I realised, I just had an epiphany in the moment of talking to him. It was just literally too much. Was too much to have to go on. So the Zoom call was enough, and then to navigate going onto a Google Doc and sharing screens and doing this and doing that, and then all the different subject areas. So I kind of stripped everything back, and we focused on his literacy stuff, his numeracy stuff, and some humanities, but I tailored it all to him. He didn't want to write. Like, one of the things he wrote, the teachers asked him, how do you feel about, being home on isolation? And his answer was, what do you think? It sucks. So he just love it. And then, she said, well, what would you like to do different? He said, well, you're asking me, what do you think? It's just so funny the way he wrote it. He just made me laugh the whole time. And I couldn't get him to write more than one sentence. And finally I was saying, what do you like? Do you like reading? No, I don't like this, don't like that. You like playing games? Yes. How about you write about playing your games? So he loves playing video games. This kid wrote up a storm. I couldn't believe it. So overnight he transformed from I don't like writing to the next day when I saw him, he said, I actually like writing if I write what I'm good, what I write about what I know. I'm like, really? Isn't that amazing? So he started writing more and more about, so what I challenged him with then was, okay, what if you were to teach me? What would I learn from playing this game? So he wrote about that. And then he wanted to, I went there one day and he said, how much do we have to do? Oh, maybe half an hour. Okay. So I went to pack up at half an hour and he said, aren't we going to do any more? So just blew me away. So anyway, all of our kids have gone back to school, and I met him at school with the principal and his coordinator, and he sat there and was able to tell his teachers what he wanted. He said, I need the work catered to me more. They were the exact words he used. It blew my mind. And the principal said, really? That sounds really good. How about we do this? I mean, this is stuff I've been battling with the school to do for such a long time. So that experience of COVID was amazing, because in 3 months, this boy did more work than he's done in 3 years. and we've also broken down this, because he has this negative attitude of himself. One minute, yep. So he has this negative attitude, you know, I can't learn, I'm a bad learner, I'm stupid, and I kept saying to him, but you're really not, you're actually a good writer, you're actually really good at this. And when I saw him last week, there was the light bulb that went on, and I thought, oh, he's got this, you know, that he actually believes in himself. The fact that he asked for more, can you give me more? Can you cater to me more? So I guess what my vision is, that we create an education system that caters to the individuality and unique genius of children, and that we forget about all the other, you know, subject areas, this and that, and let's just focus on what they can do and what they're good at, and stop focusing on what they can't do. So that's me. 5 minutes.
Yes, yes again. That's brilliant. Do you know, I remember sitting with you at Jill's place in Melbourne. This was 4 or 5 years ago, before you went to go to do the PhD, and you said, I want to evolve education across the planet. And I was like, yes, and look at you now. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Good for you. That's brilliant.
It is amazing. I love it.
Thanks for that, Karina.
I love it. And it's such a simple formula. So that's I feel like it's and I feel like what this whole pandemic did was give us a simple formula, you know, and those that ran with that formula had success.
Yeah. One of the things you might just want to think on, if you can, I know you've got to go early-ish, but even if you type it into chat, I'd love to know, so based on your commitment to alter the face of education in the world, to evolve it, and what you just said, how might you see you and or us doing that? How can we put that into play as easily and effectively and brilliantly as possible? So if you just think on that for a bit, or put it into chat if you have to leave, that'd be great.
Okay.
Super. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to go to Layla and Anthony now, who are the authors of Jump, Fall, Fly. Over to you.
Great. Well, it was really exciting to hear what you had to say, Karina, because I kind of, a silent Mexican wave went off in me, because it's been a very, very similar experience for us. So just in order for me to sort of say my vision, I have to go back and tell you a little bit of our history. So we had 3 children in the education system. When we took them out of the education system, it became very stressful, and they kind of were losing a twinkle in their eye and losing the joy to learn. So we kind of spotted that quite early on, about 9 years ago, and we made a decision to do something completely different. So we did. We packed our bags and we left, and we went on a big long journey. But so within this journey, we have done many, many things, which has been really kind of, the world has kind of been the learning tool in a way. But there was a point when they went into kind of like a Summerhill kind of type education system in Italy, which was amazing. It was an amazing experience for them, but primarily because they could self-lead to some degree. But then it became quite schooly, and they started to meet with resistance. And it was a good experience because they got to learn Italian. Anyway, the bottom line was that school closed down, and we ended up having them back at home. And then I come from a family of teachers, so my first instinct was, great, let's homeschool them. So I created like a classroom in the house. All the work on the wall was mine. I organised everything. I'd write down what the next lesson was. I was so organised, and it had almost nothing to do with the kids. It sort of was more about my sort of need to get them to learn. And of course, what did they do? They were kind of totally and utterly, after about a few months of playing along, they were totally bored. You know, they were kind of wanting to do their own thing, which I found quite hard to let go. And at that time, I think the girls were we got twin girls and a boy, and they were about 10, and I was very anxious about the fact that they weren't reading, 9 maybe, they weren't reading fluently. So I just want to tell you about this epiphany moment. There was one moment where I was following one of my daughters who, when she was at school, was told that she had a kind of reading difficulty, a kind of form of dyslexia, but not quite dyslexia, something else. But so I was very anxious about her reading, and I was literally following her around trying to get her to read, but trying really subtly, And there was one turning point where she turned around and she said to me very clearly, Mum, the best thing you can do, do you know what you can do to help me read? And I was like, yes, anything. And she said, can you just leave me alone? And I was like, and inside I was like, oh no, but actually I was, oh, okay. She said, come back to me in 6 months. So, which is a big step, but it was a big step for me. So I did. I left her alone. I left them both alone. I started leaving them all alone to do their own learning, to do their self-directed learning. And 6 months later, she was an absolute fluid, incredible reader who had a passion for reading and was a bookworm and wouldn't put books down. So for me, that was a really pivotal moment, because I realized within all that, me forcing them to do things they weren't that interested in, or moreover weren't ready to do, was so counterintuitive and so counter to learning. And then I applied this across the whole, everything, when are they ready to learn maths or English or grammar? And what actually if those things aren't the things that excite them? So we started to look at what really lit them up. And the things that lit them up weren't necessarily the things that they would be doing in school. So the things that lit them up were things like circus, painting, music, creativity, writing, gaming, and all these things we just let them run with. And so we now have 2 circus performers who perform professionally. We have our own circus theatre company, and they perform with us. We have a son who is, his brain, when it comes to computers and gaming, is just like on fire. So it's kind of, we've watched them develop into who they are, unfold into who they are, as opposed to make them into something we would like them to be. So, and that was a huge journey for me as a parent. But I think, so for me, when it comes to the future of learning, I think being able to let children lead, being able to watch their passions unfold, and a bit like a plant growing, it's let the plant unfold and grow, and figure out the garden, nurture the garden around them, do what you can to support them, but let the plant grow. And so if we could do that in a bigger context with more children, letting them arrive at what they want to do, and really fulfill their passions when they love something. If they don't love something, then don't make them do it, So has my 5 minutes been and
Yes.
gone?
Yeah, I'll give the next 5 minutes to Anthony.
Sorry. I get carried away. Sorry. Go on. Sorry.
That was great.
That's my vision, that we unleash the potential in all children by working on their garden.
Fantastic. Go for it, Anthony.
Okay. Hi. Yes. Well, the problem with 5 minutes and this topic is it's so huge that, it's very hard to restrain my mind as to where to go. But when you said at the beginning, Slara, about, what our unique take is, it's quite interesting, because in a way, I just use a metaphor quickly, which I use when I teach some of my classes. I train people to be coaches, and I say, listen, all the ingredients of how we live are not unique. I mean, they're all common human ingredients. What we just have is a certain kind of recipe, if that makes sense. And the recipe that we have, and we've sort of, if you like, and you could say our story, and which is sort of in the book, is really the story of our experimentation of trying to get the recipe right. And I suppose what's unique about our particular story is that there's a lot of people who talk about alternative education whilst keeping their kids in traditional educational systems. And we actually have had a lot of skin in the game, and it used to keep me up at night a lot, lying there thinking, am I making the most terrible mistake? My kids aren't in school, they're not in a curriculum, we're not making them learn anything, my son's resistant to reading, etc. And I, as a parent, was very anxious about I felt irresponsible a lot of the time. And I kept going back and drinking at the well of Summerhill, really, I can't remember the chap's name, A.S. Neal, and saying, listen, people have been before you, that you aren't the first person on this road, just trust it. And what I was asked to trust essentially was really the philosophy that we're working on. So the modern education system works on a certain set of principles, one of which, the core which is that children won't really learn unless you force them, that you have to mandate what they learn, when they learn, and how they learn. And effectively, it's this systemization. And what we did is we sort of abandoned that completely and said, why don't we let them learn what they want to learn, when they want to learn it, in the way that they want to learn it, and we'll support that. So we became more like facilitators as opposed to teachers. Teaching, this isn't, just to be clear, this doesn't mean we've thrown teaching out of the window, but we only teach if we're consented in. So if my son comes to me and says, Dad, will you teach me how to, you know, I don't know, use a scythe in the garden? I will, but I won't, you know, say to him, you have to now learn to use a scythe in the garden, and I'm taking you outside and you're going to pay attention to me. So there's very much built into this whole philosophy, this idea of, you know, treating children from the get-go as equal to you and deserving of the respect that we give each other as adults. And it still amazes me. I often say to people, I say, well, if an adult treated you the way that you're treating this child, how would you feel? And it's a great question, isn't it? Because a lot of the time, well, I would never accept being, you know, told to go and stand in the corner and shut up and do this, whatever it is, you know. And yet we routinely, you know, think that it's normal to behave in these disrespectful ways. So, you know, there's a lot of pieces inside this puzzle. But I think, just to, because I don't know how much time I've got, but 1 minute. So what we need is a sea change in how we think about our relationship with children. The system is a mirror to a philosophy. That system is breaking down. There's a new system coming out in the cracks. COVID has fast-tracked, which is, in a way, one of the golden, you know, gifts of COVID, is it's forced a lot of people to rethink education. And this is a really big moment, I think, for us, people like us, to step up and say, you know, there is a way of doing it. It does work. In our case, we can point to our wonderful kids who are not morons lying on the floor, you know, who can't read, who are incredibly, you know, bright and interesting human beings, not afraid of adults. So, you know, I think that the job is to show it's possible, because a lot of people, certainly some who contact us, many who contact us, are sort of saying, it feels like the whole system says I can't question it. And, you know, what happens? Because it's very lonely to take the road less traveled and be in the front of the group. So what we need is a coherent community of people who are pioneering this to do more active, focused outreach into communities to inspire parents. And I think that's where the future can, you know, lie.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a brilliant way to end that, to say how to go forward with it. How do you, you know, because there are homeschooling organizations, are there not? I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are, but just to say homeschooling and just I'll quickly say homeschooling and then having self-directed learners are two completely different things. So
How are they different? Can you just explain that quick for us?
Yeah, well, if you're homeschooling, it depends on how you homeschool. So some people homeschool and they follow the curriculum. So they bring the curriculum from the school and then they do it in the home. And that is completely different to letting your child follow their passion and follow what they love and follow what sets them on fire. That is bringing the school from the school into your home, which is quite a complex thing if you think about it.
Yeah.
Stressful for the child, stressful for the parent. So those are the difference. Yeah.
Yeah, and also, you know, just remember that homeschooling often is just a continuation of a kind of command, coercive control system being, if like, placed across a child, irrespective of the child's needs, desires, and wants. So homeschooling can often be just as traumatic for children as and yet more so because they don't even have a community of kids.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, thank you. That's great. I'm going to go to Fleur next because she has homeschooled, sort of, her son for the last 10 years, 12 years. And you've always said, Fleur, it was a social experiment. So maybe you could talk a little bit about it for you and how that works. So go for it.
Yeah. So I never set out to homeschool my son. I would say, I guess part of the terminology in the education world would be unschooled. Like you almost you allow them to be unschooled and move away from the traditional way of working. But my son went to a nursery and he really enjoyed it. He had great. It often depends, I found with the what the teacher's energy was like. If the teacher had a really great expansive energy, then my son obviously really responded to that positively. As a school system, because before it was all about play, and then as it progresses, as they get older, they just have to sit and work in books really. So that was quite problematic, and I could see, like it's been commented before, that my son was just being sort of squished and that his light was not shining as brightly. And he kind of, in many ways, he kind of took himself out of school by refusing to go in and with various means. So he was out of school from year 3, year 2 in primary until he was 11, and then he actually asked to go into secondary school. And there was a Steiner school available for him to go to, which was a sort of government funded one. So he was there for a couple of years, which was okay. It was a very badly run school, had a lot of problems. But it sort of bridged that gap between being at home and going into school, because it was quite badly managed. It was sort of fairly sort of loosely structured. So that in one way was quite good. He didn't really learn anything there, I have to say, not a lot anyway. So it sort of suited him in that respect. And then he had some time off, and now he's at a digital studio school, it's called, which is kind of bridge between a school and a college. And he had the choice to learn game design at the school, but he does also have to do the traditional subjects, which he's okay with, as long as he feels they have purpose and meaning, that they might take him on the route to where he wants to go later on in life. And that's the only reason why he tolerates doing anything, is if it feels like it's significant to him, which of course is, the way it should be. That's, he wants to put his energy into something that is significant to him and that he's interested in. But also with the maths and English, it's more just kind of being with the rules that are there already and just sort of playing with them in the best way that one can, if one needs to do that. So yeah, and I think overall the sort of experience we've had, it is very much about choice and trusting that the younger person knows what they're good at and what they're interested in, and that they have their own timing to explore things and excel in things, and maybe not be interested in others. So even while he's at school now, if they're not offering what he wants to learn, he just learns it at home in his own time. I mean, he is sort of slightly questioning why he's even at school because of that. But again, it's partly, I think it's also, as they get older, there's social aspects to it that sometimes kick in, and so sometimes it's nicer for them to be sort of socializing with other people. And I do often feel as well, the sort of part of the purpose of school is so that the young people can get to know how to deal with different characters in personalities out there. That if they're sort of isolated at home all the time, that's a little bit more difficult to do. So it's sort of it's like sort of life learning, I suppose. It sort of puts aside the academic learning, which is so it's about choice. And the thing that was probably most positive for Luke when in the school environment was when there was a lot of extra helpers. So they'd have the teacher and then they'd have extra helpers there, and it made it much more flexible, the environment, so they could go off into little breakout groups and do something a bit more that they were more interested in. And that was my sense of, if schools continue as they are, which they will up to a point, because not every parent can cope with having their child at home, not every child likes being at home, as was mentioned, that if there was a lot more help and less curriculum, they put the money into the help, bringing the helpers in, then that would facilitate more free-flowing an environment, and that students would be able to choose more what they wanted to do, because there would be the help there. And that to me feels like a sort of a positive and very achievable thing that could happen within the system right now, to open it up to more people and more and yeah, more of an open learning system, more creativity. And because I don't think most teachers even like a lot of the stuff that they have to do. Really, it's not my impression. So, you know, I'm sure they would love it as well, you know. So
do you know, one of the things that I love, and I see it in all the kids of my friends, is that they're independent, free thinking, unafraid, bold creators in life. You know, they forge their own paths boldly without, and sometimes that can be hard, I'm sure, as parents to deal with. And yet, to me, that's what produces kind of an optimal adult, who's going to create with genius in the world, which I think is really exciting. So, bravo. Thanks for. Okay, I'm going to get Ian to share with us next. Ian's done outdoor learning in an adventure sense with kids in summer camps. So, Ian, you want to give us some of that?
Okay, thank you very much. It's so lovely to be here and on my most passionate subject, since learning is my life. A little bit of action. Can we live long and prosper, folks? There's a reason for this. It's a lovely little trick. If we just try that, it's Spock from where is it? Star Trek. The reason it's relevant is that it forms a gap between two fingers, and that is many messages, one of which is to say, actually, there's a gap between what it is that's going on in our schools and in the inverted commas standard education system and where we need to be. I just don't get what that's about. In that little exercise, I have crystallized down everything that anyone ever learned in adventure development and adventure learning. It is a stunning little trick with almost no energy involved and very few costs to most. But the gap is also that in the effort of trying to make two fingers move where they wouldn't normally move, one actually goes through the whole sequence of learning to learn. It's the paying attention to that little gap that happens as we first notice, then become aware, and then understand, and then take some commitment, and then put into action something new. And from that, I think we've got the most dreamy title to this webinar. The future of learning is the future is learning, and the future has always been learning. A lovely little flow of words there. Now, I work in the world of intuition, the world of effective understanding of quality, elements of adventure. To go where one has not been before is by definition learning. Simple, straightforward. Anyone who wants to facilitate learning, for one can never teach anything. One has to facilitate the learning of something. And of course, self-facilitation, the learning of learning, is where it is that all our progression will have to go in the future. The world of intuition, imagination, fantasy are all routes to great places, but the biggest one, and if we refer to that chestnut, parachutes are great, but they only work if they're open. Well, minds are great, but they only work if they're open. Let's think in terms of being very open in our minds, understanding this gap, and knowing that unless we keep our focus on this gap, then we never end up with that wonderful place of spotting the learning as it's happening, therefore getting better at exercising our learning, therefore becoming amazing learning beings, which is where we are. And that's just a truly fruitful way of saying the power of adventure is not about being stuck to a wall, going up in a rocket, playing around on a big sea, or realizing the world in a grain of sand. The power of adventure is in being there now.
Beautiful. Yeah. I finally did master it.
It's a great little skill, isn't it? If you have to watch it, you haven't mastered it.
I had to switch hands. I remember we did a family thing at Buckland Hall back in the early 2000s, and there was a tiny little boy with us. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
He was like, what, 4 or 5 or something like that. And you took them out for a walk in the wild woods of Wales. And I remember you were teaching them how to leap streams and be unafraid, like to know they could do it and to find their way to do it. And I thought that was amazing. And then that little boy came back, if I recall correctly, and sat in the middle of all these adults and a few kids and started to talk about, I think it was intuition or genius or something. Do you remember? We were all like, whoa, look at this kid. He just came out so brilliantly. And I think that's the skill that we're all talking about, is how do you pull that out of kids, that brilliance, that magnificence, that uniqueness, that creativity and visionariness and all of that kind of thing. So yeah, beautifully done.
It sounds like an old chestnut again, but it's not. We haven't cracked it yet. The whole world of giving confidence is about all of that in our young people. Sometimes you can't just do that and end up with the outcome, but what you can do is give confidence through doing something that doesn't become naturally to somebody, and that confidence is then transferred. It's a beautiful thing, because knowing is that brilliant of freedom. And if one has happiness and freedom and all those other things, someone yesterday, they caught me and said, you've got a mirror on the back of your bathroom wall, haven't you? And I thought for a minute, maybe. And they said, well, don't you notice? I said, no, it's a lot of years since I've used a mirror. I don't have that lack of confidence. My body hasn't changed. I can shave without a mirror. I don't have much hair to trouble. My complexion is what it is, and da da da. So it's that confidence. If you have that confidence, you're going to be intuitive. You're going to have wonderful fantasies, amazing intuition. You're going to be connected, and that's where there's a real issue. It's the gap. It's that gap between what people tell you, which is interesting probably, but unuseful, and being you.
Yeah.
Being oneself now.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Valeria, do you mind if I say something to that? So
yeah,
one of the models that I talk about, so it's jumping on what Ian just said, is that confidence breeds success. Success breeds more risk-taking in learning and that kind of desire to learn, which then breeds more confidence, which then breeds more success, and it becomes this cycle of learning and growing and evolving. So, and it's just that's where it all comes from. Most kids that have had constant experiences of failure don't have that confidence to learn and be a risk taker in their learning, because they're constantly worrying about failing. So that's a good point.
Amazing.
Well said, Karina. I wonder if I might put another little example in. It'll be very relevant in this. It needs to go there. I used to run a leisure centre, and one of the rooms was a disco dance training workshop, and I refused to have any see-through doors or windows in that workshop. Simple as that. And it didn't matter whether you were women or men, you absolutely did things, you got involved, and nobody must see it. So it was the total freedom to experiment. And that total freedom to experiment through confidence of one's body, confidence of one's thought, confidence of the support around you. That's part of that wonderful circle that you've described.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. Thank you both. That's great. Anthony, did you want to say something? No?
We have more speakers to go, don't we? So
Yeah, one more. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, Lisa couldn't be with us. So Julia's the last one, and then we'll open it up. So Julia's the grandmother of 4 who's been doing Zoom calls with them, and she's the one who inspired this call. So go for it, Julia.
Hi everybody, and I have to say, all the time you were all talking, everything resonated so much. I can hardly sit still on my chair. I'm so excited. Thank you. I just want to start by explaining where this ridiculous education system comes from. I'll do it very quickly. The British education system is based on old tradition and strict rules, and it was established in 1870, believe it or not, and it was created by the Victorians around the Industrial Revolution age of manufacturing, which specialised in mass identical product for outcome, and has always struggled to recognise the opportunity for different, unique individual. It tried to make each child a copy of the other and was totally submissive. The original curriculum was written by a government quango, and they hardly let any teachers have any go at it. And it was 3 core subjects and 6 foundation subjects. But get this, the model stated that real intelligence consists of the capacity of deductive reasoning and, this is the biggie, a knowledge of the classics. And that alone was considered academic ability. Was it any wonder that most of our kids thought, oh my God, I'm not clever at all? And all they had to do, they were whacked theory so they could pass exams, you know, never being given a relevant context to anything that's happened. And another biggie, the summer holidays, ludicrous. They were originally put there so that the children could go and get help to bring the harvest in from the fields, and the children from London were sent to the Kent hop fields to pick hops for 6 weeks, and that is the derivation of the big school summer holidays. It's absolutely ludicrous that that is still the foundation of an education system for a country. I could absolutely scream. But since many of you have been talking, I've thought of a couple of things that have happened to me, similar to what you're talking about. And one of them was, I worked in an academy for kids that have been excluded from school. Oh my God, they were only excluded because that system that I talked about just didn't match them. And one of the kids, they said, will you do a one-to-one with him? He can't read. So, right, okay. So long story short, we looked at what he could do. He could read a bit, but da-di-da-di-da. So I was trying to think of what we could do. So I was asking him and talking to him. And the word beautiful, oh no, first of all, I said to him, did you know that our language is made up of many different languages? We were invaded by the Normans, invaded by the Vikings, and they all brought their language in. So English is actually such a mixture of so many different languages. That's why it's ridiculous. I said, for instance, we are about the only language that has more words for one thing. You've got a sofa, a settee, a couch. All the same thing, 3 words. Why? And so it goes on. The language is ridiculous. I said, and it's not you, it's the language that you're trying to grasp. I said, let's look at the word beautiful. And I wrote it down and I put my hand over the last bit. I said, the first bit of the word, B-E-A-U, beautiful, is actually French. And it actually does mean beautiful. And then some ridiculous person way back decided to put a tiffle on the end of it for no apparent reason whatsoever, and it became beautiful. This is how ridiculous our language is. And the young lad sat and looked at me, and it was like, bingo, bingo, bingo. And he, long story short, he subsequently passed all the exams to go to nautical college, and he now designs hovercraft. Bingo, yes. And there's lots of stories like that. My 2 4-year-olds, I said to them, let's write a story together. So every day we wrote a page, and they said what was going on the page, and they did some drawings, and we wrote the number of the page at the bottom. We actually got to page 18 before they had to go back to school. And they went, we don't want to go back to school, Nana. We want to write 100 pages. And so we haven't quite got to 100 yet, but, you know, we're on our way, because they're leading it and they want it. They're seeking it. And, you know, I think education should be sought and not taught for learning. My other grandchildren, I started to do one thing with them and went off at tangents talking about things. And subsequently, the 3 of us together have learned the whole signing language alphabet, the British one. We've learned about how to say all the words that join things together, adverbs, program, nouns and all that. I didn't tell them that's what they were. In sign language. I've told them about animals, and we now have conversations in signing. And I never started off doing signing. I started off with animals, you know, at which they were more interested in how animals poo than anything else. So I had to think of stupid things to talk to them about, to gain their attention from the place that they were. And it's been wonderful, because for me, it's been, I just get so emotional, because these children really wanted, God, I didn't know, I can't believe this, sorry. And did you know that 75% of our teachers suffer from work-related stress because of the SATs that the government decided to do? And it's ridiculous. I worked with another lad who'd sat in a class for 3 years, nodding and shaking his head. Solara might remember this, his name was Dominic, nodding and shaking his head at the right stages. And he was actually teaching himself, and he was in advance of the class. And whilst he was doing it, the teacher never found out. And he is now flying in his chosen career. Fantastic guy. But you know, we're all living in this different world. There's technological advances every day. We've got mobility, globalization, collaboration. And what do the kids know? What the teachers tell them. They still don't get the opportunity to look at things from different perspectives. You know, it's got to change. Knowledge and learning's got to be sought, not taught. We need to work together seamlessly. Education, industry, commerce, technology, art, all working together seamlessly, collaborating. You know, I don't need to go into any more details about education, amount of things we can do, because there's lots and lots of people talking on the internet now, and we're talking together and sharing amazing ideas. And we now know the why. What we know now is the how. There's always a place for philosophers, but together we need to be the pathfinders and the pace setters. And we must, for our children, our teachers, our employees, our world, we must act now. We can't let it go on. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I get so emotional. I just want action.
Yeah, got it. I love your...
I cannot leave my grandchildren where they are. I just cannot do it.
I think that's the same for everybody. I think we have this deep, passionate caring about the unleashing of the genius potential in every single person on the planet, children and adults, and all kinds of life forms, not just humans as well. That was beautifully said, Julia. I get it. And one of the, just time-wise, I'll just take us into a kind of open discussion. So one of the things that I think Julia brought into the questioning beforehand when we were looking at this was, what can we do? How can we do, like, it's great to hear people's experiences, but, I remember talking in conferences back in the early 2000s on the new kids and infinite intelligence, and yet the school system hasn't really moved at all in that time. There are some alternative options that I think are good, but what can we do? What can each of us do in our own lives? What can we do systematically? So if any of you, participants and presenters alike, if any of you have any thoughts on that,
can I have some discussion about that? So I've been thinking about this a lot. Obviously, it's been bane of my existence. But I mean, one quick little thing about that: the boy that I gave as the case study. The interesting thing about that case study is it's the same high school I went to 40 years ago. Or 42 or 43 years ago. And you know what? Apart from a few buildings here or there, nothing's changed. It's unbelievable to me. It blows my mind, honestly. One of the things that he was learning about was the Aztecs, and he kept saying, "Why am I learning this crap?" I'm like, I don't know. It's on the curriculum. I don't get it either. And I think that we've allowed politicians and the leaders to make these decisions for us. The parents are asking for more. I talk to parents all the time. I meet them in every place. Most of my teacher aides are also parents. So educators are not wanting this either. So for some reason we've allowed politics and power and whatever that is to then dictate the terms of our education, and it's not. We've lost the real ability of education. So sorry, was that Ian? Was it?
Yeah, I actually coming to your point, Karina. You're entirely right. I have searched and searched for a way to make some impact into this strangeness that I know we can use they, it's us. I know that we can say power, but what on earth is it? I personally think it's a lack of power because they really have a problem with making decisions and seeing where it is that they should be going. The emphasis on, yes, can you help us, is always there, but they don't know how to fill that gap between what is and what really should be.
And I think we've got
probably a discussion. I was saying probably a discussion about how to fill that distance would be a really.
I think it has to be driven with the parents, because parents don't have. I don't know what it's like in England, but I certainly know what it's like in Australia. Parents have lost that power in a way because they defer to the teacher's authority, and they also defer to what they think is best. They've been sold that the curriculum is best and testing is needed and this school's the best, and people are lining up to get their schools in the best kindergarten, for goodness sake, because of a test score rather than what it actually does from a pedagogical and educational point of view. So I think some of the change has to come from the ground up, starting with people like us, but also branching out to parents. And I say to parents all the time, don't you know that you've got power? You have. You just have to voice it. They don't believe that they can because they don't feel that they can challenge the system. So there's something kind of in that we could provide a kind of pathway to, then I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, brilliant. Bryony, go ahead. You're on mute, so.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. Hi.
Okay, great. I've just managed to work that out. Oh, okay. Just want to say very quickly, thank you. I think it's so great, all these people coming together. And Salera, how I know you actually is from one of those very early conferences in 2000 in Brighton, when I just had my first baby, who was a baby, and I had all these amazing plans and hopes, you know, for kind of really helping her connect to her inner self is my passion. Of course, it turns out both of my children, my subsequent son, who I had, went into state school because I don't think I couldn't do it at the time. I had postnatal depression, etc. Anyway, you know, it just didn't happen. Now they're fully ensconced in the state system. And so I'm joining this, and I totally agree with you, Solera. Schools have not changed since 2000, or, you know, way back in the 19th century, like Julia said. So I'm joining this from two aspects, really, and it does relate to what the other people have just been saying. I'll get to that in a minute. So firstly, and actually just by total coincidence, I met Fleur because I loved her paintings. I think maybe from you, Solera, you must have posted something. And then I went to see her exhibition in Glastonbury, and I have one of her paintings. Anyway, so I'm coming at it as, I used to work as an energy healer, and I'm still very much focused on that. And my passion, and I'm trying to get around to thinking of how I'm going to use this more, is helping people connect to their divine, you know, I call it divine, not in a religious sense, obviously, their God source, you know, their sense of their source of brilliance within. So I want to do this with children who are already in the system, because like Fleur says, that system, however much we dislike it or indifferent to it or whatever, is going to still be around for a while. And I'm totally on board with trying to create something new. But through my own personal experience, there are kids in that system that have lost their way and they need help. So I want to somehow try and help those kids connect. So there's that. I'm coming from it as, you know, the parent, or the parent of two children in state school, who I can see particularly throughout this COVID experience, are fully brainwashed, for want of a better word. It's very hard to get them to break out of their ways of thinking, and it relates back to confidence and other things that people have spoken about. And for me, from my experience when I used to teach healing and meditation and work with people like that on a psychological level, most disconnect, if you like, comes from lack of confidence or a lack of connection to true self. So that's what I want to do in life, and I have done, and I'm just trying to work out a new way to do it, is how can we get these kids to connect back, even if they may still be in that system and have been brought up in that system. And also, sorry, can I just finish? One other thing is, it's not just the kids, it's the parents that need support. The parents need support because it's so rigid, the school system. The parents need support if they're interested. How can they help their kids in this way, and how can they connect themselves and be able to share that with their children? So that's what I'm interested in.
And just before you do, Julia, so one of the things that I've always found works for anybody at any age is to have someone who sees them, someone who gets them, someone who liberates them, someone who sees their genius, calls their magnificence. As a coach, I do that all the time with people. And I think having champions for your kid, if it's not a parent, it could be anybody, really. It's champions. And the other thing is that I find the system very slow to move, and it's kind of like pushing an elephant up the hill. So I've found if I want to be effective in creating something in society, I move around the system and find another way to get something to happen. And usually what I think now is happening is the power of the people. And it's how do you coalesce the power of the people? How do you bring those voices together? Not necessarily in protest. I'm not a protest activist type person, although I admire them big time, I got to tell you, but I have to be for something. So it's, how do you coalesce those voices, those forces, and that then creates the place where the system has to adapt to, because of the power of the voice. So Julia, you were going to say something, and then Anthony, I thought you wanted to go next. So Julia, go for it.
I would like to move to action, and I would like to move the action that each one of us, this is a suggestion and a request, that each one of us shares this video, this Zoom meeting today, with at least one other person who they know is interested. I had got somebody else, but she was working, so couldn't come on here today. And then we have another Zoom meeting, but probably in an evening, because as I said, I had a couple of people who couldn't come. And if we do that and we keep spreading, it's called pyramid selling, isn't it, in another bag. But if we do this, because Solera was saying the other day that a guy was talking about education and he had 7,000 people had watched it. Well, I want 7 million people to watch this and to listen to what we're saying, because as you say, Solera, it's the power of the people now. COVID-19 and technology is giving power to the people. And for my grandchildren, and for your children and your grandchildren, we have got to keep this moving, please.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Julia. Anthony, go for it.
Right. So in terms of moving to action, I think where, like I said before, and some other of you said, the place to start is with what the modern society would call the consumer, and the consumer is essentially the parents. I mean, the people using these services, they, are essentially parents, and they are in a position to change their behaviour around how they interact with schooling systems, or even to remove themselves from negative systems or difficult systems and go to other systems. So the question really arises is, what do parents need to make that transition? And really, one of the problems that we have and we see, not just in this kind of situation, I come with quite a long time experience in behavioral health, particularly around addiction recovery, and which is one of the areas that I've been working for a long time. And one of the difficulties we have is it's very easy to say, you shouldn't do that, it doesn't work, but not actually have a follow through. So what happens is people say, it's kind of like showing up and saying, you're doing something wrong and you could be doing something better, goodbye. This isn't helpful. And this is one of the reasons we wrote our book, because we wanted to say, actually, here's a bit of a how-to. Here is actually a way that you, instead of us just saying, well, I don't think the schools are so great, and yes, we agree with you, here's how you can actually think about moving away from it. So we need a two-pronged approach. We need both to inspire people to think differently and have the confidence, but that confidence will only be built if we actually have somewhere for people to go. I mean, it's very lonely being an alternative education parent. I mean, it was for us. I mean, most of our family thought we'd gone nuts. People would literally socially have a go at us if we said our kids weren't in school. I mean, it is not to be overlooked just how, because we're in a bubble of enlightenment, we think, we're in our fishbowl here, we think it's easy. But out there, trust me, I don't think it is so easy. And I think, so I just feel very called to say that what we need is more events like this where people can come and get, comfort and feel like, wow, it is possible to do this. And, what Julia was saying, that's so inspirational, and thank you for sharing, your feelings on that, because I was moved too. And so that's what I wanted to say really, is that we need, it's not just a bunch of clever people turning up and saying it can be done. We actually need something on the ground that is tangible. Yeah,
Layla. And then I want to ask Cesarina to share about what she's done with kids.
I can't say that into Byronate, just wanted to kind of come back to you, because I am also aware that not everybody is in a position to homeschool, unschool their kids. Well, actually, a lot of people are homeschooling right now, but I am aware of that, and I wanted to offer something to you along the lines of there is always the flavors and the feelings of unschooling and self-directed learning that you can give your children, even if they're in the system, which sounds so contradictory, but it's just the thing of letting them lead and following, and I think that can be beneficial and kind of a lovely bridge to your kids, you know, even when it comes to things like I sometimes have to sit and watch to get into my son's world, let him show me how to play Assassin's Creed or something, which is not something that I particularly am really interested in. But then I start looking at it and watching. So it's that I was just trying to think, what can you take from self-directed learning, unschooling, that can benefit you or, you know, move you forward. That was just something I wanted to offer to Barney. And okay, and to Julia, I totally hear you and feel your feelings. Well, I don't feel your feelings, but I can empathise, because you know, the reasons we took our children out of school was because I felt it wasn't right. It wasn't right. This isn't now. And yeah, I could go on and on, but I'm going to stop so I let other people.
Yeah. So Serena, you did the yoga for kids and had a wonderful group going back a while ago when you were in, I think, Philadelphia. Do you want to talk about, because I could see those kids just bursting as you worked with them. They were bursting free. So you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I was in Ohio and Cincinnati before I moved to Canada 2 years ago. Yeah, my experience, Olera, was as a school teacher, and finding for myself the power of connecting the mind and the body and the intuition in the body and the breathing and the mindfulness and all of that, along with the coaching and the creativity, got blended into a program. But it took me, obviously it's been a 12-year journey now. So I'm still working now with kids one-on-one right now, but working with their teachers and moms and adults who are passionate to bring these tools to the children. And it's evolving. It's been evolving since I moved from US to Canada. We've added embodiment work, which has to do with sensing the whole field of knowledge within the body and the intuition, and trusting it and feeling secure enough in our being and centered enough to take action, because that's very important. I felt like we're dealing with this wound of separation that's coming up in the collective. That's why we're seeing, you know, all the racism and everything. So we're dealing with integrating that wound of feeling alone. We're never alone. Here we are in a discussion. Here we're all emotionally invested in the future of learning. Well, to me, it's a celebration today, not just to know each other and hear about each other's gifts and offerings, but to, like Julia and you said, it is time for action. And it's been time for action, and we've been doing it. So I want to acknowledge first in my being, in my body right now, that each and every voice I've heard on this call is very important, and each gift is very treasured and cherished. And you have been changing the learning all these years. It's just that now it's shifting to bringing it more home. And home is whatever home is for each of every one of us. Home is the whole planet. Home is in our backyard. Home is the Zoom calls. And so I don't want to talk so much about me, because there's it's a lot of fun to talk about that. But I want to say, you asked Solera about what to do, and Ian talked about the gap of what is and what it could be. I don't know if we have considered, but this is lingering in my consciousness today as I'm listening to everyone. We have considered we are a global village of innovators. We have been. And now with the technology and the Zoom, I'm realizing through Zoom and my trainings online for these parents that we're transmitting as powerfully, if not even more powerfully, as we're transmitting this knowledge in person. So a conference, an online conference, a place, a platform that all of us have wisdom, all of us have gems to share, to offer to these parents, to these kids, whoever is drawn to it, obviously whoever is ready to receive the bountifulness of what we have all gathered. I think this type of global village platform, this online, it could be called something different if it's not want to be called a conference, but a play, a stage where the play can begin, where we can celebrate each and everyone's expertise, because what we're doing here, we're coming into discovering the depth of each and everyone's journey and celebrating and seeing that genius in each other as we see the progress and the evolution of this learning, like Ian said. So the gap, I think it's this action, the gap can be filled with this action of celebrating and creating something where we are actually supporting everyone's beauty and everyone's joy and everyone's gifts, because they're so unique, and will take us forever to discover just on little calls everyone's depth and all of that. But what if it's a bigger platform where everyone has time and to share and engage people in activities? They can engage people in dancing and feeling through the body and breathing and playing games and like autistic family work like Karina, and everything can be done right there live, and people come and partake, and then they take that transformation and what they have discovered through those sessions, they take it to their world, and perhaps they can deepen it, and perhaps that's what's coming to me as you've been asking on the call, the genius in action, right? The genius at play. And it is all about that, returning home to the joy of the discovery of that, and expanding it in the world. So thank you. I don't want to take too long today.
Thank you. That's brilliant. A couple of ideas come up to me as you were talking. So one is Ian applied to the UK Innovation government department to fund summer camps online for kids. And I think that's a brilliant option. And I wonder if there's a possibility of somehow doing like some sort of a GoFunding type thing to get, and then using all the resources that we have to do something like that, where it is genius at play, and seeing where each of the different people could participate in some way. So that's one of the things. But I also had this idea of, like Anthony and Layla were saying, how hard it was, how people were like, what are you doing? There's now a lot of these kids, like Fleur's son and your kids, are like older teens now, and they're brilliant. I mean, they're amazing. And what if there was like a web page somewhere with just a little video or a picture of each of these kids and who they are? Like when you said you're running circus schools, it's like, oh my God, that's so, if people could see the results, if they could, hey, this worked, this experiment worked, it's turned out these kids are brilliant and innovative and genius. And I think the other thing that's missing from the school system is training in entrepreneurial skills or coaching skills. If they had entrepreneurial skills and coaching skills, I think kids would be a lot further along in what they want to do, because they have so many ideas, so much vision, so much passion, so much energy. And if there was a way to do that, I have a friend who works with people in businesses to train them as mentors for high school students, so the high school students can become entrepreneurial. And so that's just one way. So I've got all these resources of people all over the world who do quite amazing things, that if we ever kind of pulled it all together, you'd get quite an amazing experience come out of it. So those are just a few of my ideas for throwing in the mix, just for fun. So anybody else before we wrap her up? Anybody want to say anything else?
I would just like to say it's been so inspirational, and everyone has got all the right answers, and we just need to move a good few of them forward. Further and further and further.
Yeah, fantastic.
Would anybody else like to agree to have another Zoom meeting, all of us together, and maybe invite more people? Would you host another one, Solara? And would anyone, could we do it? Could you put your hand up if you'd be interested in doing it and bringing more?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, we'll put a second. Yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
Oh.
Yeah, So,
okay, yeah, Anthony first, then Madeline. So go, Anthony.
I just want to say that we've been toying with the idea of doing some kind of summit for a while. You know, under our Jump for Fly umbrella, which now encompasses not just the book, but, you know, like you said, circus and arts projects and so on. So if that's something that we can put in the mix, maybe that's something we could talk about a bit on the next call, or we could.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. So yes, that would be wonderful. Yeah.
I just see the source of funding go by. It's 4 military helicopters.
Perfect.
I love it. Okay, Madeline, you were going to say something?
Yes, well, we've been sitting, but I'd just like to say I've really enjoyed everybody's contributions. I'm very excited as the daughter of 2 teachers who were in the vanguard of education, really trying to rattle the cage and shake things up in the 60s. It's, you know, I feel saddened that we're still having this conversation, but optimistic for the future. So I thought, yes, I really picked, you know, thought, yeah, what can we as individuals do? Because that's where it starts. And so I wrote a list, and a lot of them reflect what you've already been saying, so I won't repeat that. But just slightly controversially, I might want to add, this system is kept in place, as we all know, by politicians who went through public schools, Oxbridge, and all the rest of it, and it suits them to maintain the status quo and their elite. And, you know, you've got Michael Gove with, oh, let's teach more grammar. It's absolutely ludicrous. So without wanting to be a cage, well, no, I'm going to be a cage rattler. If we don't want the system to perpetuate, let's vote them out. So that's my hapeth in it.
Got it. Okay. All righty. So that's brilliant. We'll set up another call. So is there, somebody mentioned, I think Julia, somebody mentioned doing it later. Does like 6, 7 p.m. UK work for everybody if we do another one, or would you prefer it during the day? Does it matter?
Evening's fine, day is fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe 6 p.m., something like that. Okay, I'll set something up in the next week or two, but I'll also kind of just lay out some of the ideas we had, because I think the idea of a summit, summer camp, genius at play, you know, bringing them together in some way would be a good thing. And GoFundMe is really wonderful at doing things like that. If you want to come from the power of the people, then let them fund it, you know, like, why not? It's amazing what you can generate with those things, as opposed to having to get government funding and then following the rules of things. And actually, it doesn't cost that much when everybody's, you know, kind of volunteering, and you've got Zoom and all of that kind of thing. But it's how you interact with the kids that's the key. Like, what are you giving the kids to do that, as opposed to us adults having conversations too? So exciting. I love it. Good call. Really brilliant.
So I was gonna say one more thing. You can actually have children present as well. I had the privilege of every so often in my 12 years met several kids around age of 12 who took the training and became kids teachers, and they're still working. They're 15, 16 now back in Ohio, and they're still teaching on the side. So there are many kids who are meant to be teaching as well, and sharing their wisdom.
I think that would be wonderful.
It would be great.
Yeah, that would be wonderful if it was designed around the kids teaching things. That would be fabulous. Okay. All right, well, let us all go. Thank you very much. It's been wonderful. Loved it. I'll put the recording into the event, and feel free to share it as much as you want. So lots of love. Bye.